Welcome to the Mental Health Takeaways podcast on what is a particular milestone for us because we have now been going for a year, and our first ever episode, one of our pilot episodes, was a special guest, a man called Matt Knibb, and he's back.
I was hoping for a bigger build-up. I was hoping for, like, international sex symbol, mental health first aid instructor to the stars, something along those kind of lines. But I'll go with Matt Knibb. Just that.
Okay. Well, perhaps we'll build up as we go. So it's been a journey. I said to you earlier that I've listened to your episode back today to brush up and refresh myself with what happened. And I thought it was going to be cringing all the way through. And there were a few points where I was cringing. But actually, I think we're doing pretty well. So I really feel this is a very celebratory episode. And we are going to pick up on some things. You're still gonna interrupt, even though you're the guest, aren't you?
I didn't interrupt. I just put my hand up. Just to say, I started listening to my episode. I didn't have time to listen to all of it, and seeing as you're driving this one, I didn't need to listen to all of it. But I was cringing for the bits that I heard. But then it reminded me, I'm sure you'll pick up on this, so I won't say too much about it. It just reminded me about how far we've come. That's all I'll say for now. We might discuss it more later. But in terms of how far we have come and how much we have learned and how much better this has got and how proud of it we are and should be, then I was amazed. But anyway, you carry on.
There we go. That's the point of this episode, really, is that life has moved on. We've been doing this for a year now. Things have changed. Some situations have changed. Some situations have remained the same. But that's the thing with mental health, that it is dynamic. We're not just kind of one day we're battling anxiety and then that goes away and we never have that again. Things change all the time. So we thought we would bring to you kind of the update. You know, here we are a year on. So we're going to explore that. And the show today is going to follow the similar format, that pure gold that we usually have, but just tweaked slightly because obviously we know what Matt Knibb's takeaways were last time. We know that he talked about fish and chips. Well, he actually talked about fish and chips. He talked about pizza. He talked about lots of different takeaways. So we're not going to talk about that. We are going to reference takeaways to kick off. So I'm going to ease you in, Knibbo, just as we would with any other guest. But we're just going to make it relevant to your situation. And at the moment, you know, you talked in your first episode that you were just moving into the house. Things are much more settled now, I know. And, you know, you've been up and down in terms of dating and you've taken a break from that. But you're kind of delving into that again. So I've put a little bit of a twist on that, you know, not treading on our dating
Brad,
special.
I want to know what the twist is. I want to get going. What is it?
We're not going to dip on our dating special toes because we need Claire here for that because she brings all the sensible advice. So yeah, there are a few twists throughout the show. So I don't think we need to say any more than that. And you're eager, I'm eager. Let's get into it, shall we? Here we go. Last time, when we talked takeaways, you talked about having a takeaway with the kids and you talked through the choices that you would order for them and you talked around kind of getting them settled because it was new, you just moved into the home. So we've moved on a bit from there and hopefully the kids are really settled in with you at home and things like that. But because I know you are dipping your toe into the dating waters again, my first question to you is, where would you take away your next first date to?
That is a good question. Like, where would I go for a first date?
Yeah. Where would you sort of take them to? What would be your ideal thing and why?
Can we, first of all, never disclose the date of this recording so that should I be with anyone by the time this show comes out, they won't know if they were or were not one of the people that I'm about to talk about. And I'll confess straight off the bat there that, yeah, there was a couple of weekends ago, where I had 3 first dates in a weekend, although one of those first dates got postponed. And they were 3 classic first dates, so 3 really good first dates. And I told people about them. Like, there's lots and lots of women where I work. It's a really female-dominated environment. And I was telling my female colleagues about that, and they were all like, "Oh, that sounds lovely. Oh, what a lovely date." So one of them, I just went to a country pub for lunch, had an amazing conversation with somebody there. One of them, we went and painted pottery at a kiln workshop place, arts and crafty, and it's
Nice.
nice. I like having a thing to do on a date. And one of them was just a walk along the beach with some fish and chips, and I took the new puppy with me. Like that was dream scenario of puppy, beach, chips, wonderful. But my answer that's going to really frustrate you is I think it really depends on who the date is with. Because there's what I would like to do on a date, and if the person I had matched with and was going to go on a date with, if their ideas of what would be a great first date were totally different to mine, we probably wouldn't go on a date. Like if they were, let's go to the opera, I'm up for that. Like I'm up for a bit of opera, but I'm not up for spending money on it on a first date. Like I'll try it in an established relationship if that's really important to you, but I don't want to give the impression that we're always going to be going to the opera and I'm going to be loving it, because I'm not. So yeah, a large part of it depends on who I would be going with. But what I like, and go around the houses here. What I like is something relaxed and informal, and I think that's important because I am quite a relaxed and informal person. So I kind of use the date to give the woman that I'm with an impression of what I'm actually like. So I like a relaxed and informal date. I also really like that thing about things like daytime dates and coffee dates and museum dates, like museums that are free, means that a guy can't hide behind how much money he spends on a date. So, because that's a toxic trait that I could absolutely fall into. Like, I will try to keep this woman happy by spending loads of money, and I do not want to start off on that foot because that only goes to a bad place. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. It's good because I wasn't sure where you were going to go at first when you were saying it depends on who I'm going on the date with. Because I was like, oh, are you gonna go down the road of kind of sacrificing your own thoughts and ideas in order to kind of please them? But you didn't do that at all. I think it's really nice, that idea of actually, no, I need to present my authentic self. Because either way, you're not wasting time. If they're getting to know you, and if they like you, then they're weird. But you know they get to know you, and therefore they can figure out whether actually they want to invest in the time, which hopefully you're doing the same. But also, if you're not their cup of tea, then that's okay. Like, you're not pretending; you're just showing them, well, this is me. And I think that's a really strong place to start in terms of a first date.
Well, it's more psychology than mental health, but I recognise about myself that I am either a recovering or recovered people pleaser, and I was shit hot at people pleasing. I'm really good at it, but it's really bad for me. It's really bad for anyone to be a people pleaser, and so I could pretend to be almost anything on a date in order to impress that person and to keep them happy and to make them like me. But I've realised that is such a toxic way to potentially start a relationship. It's even a toxic way to start a friendship. And so I don't do that anymore. I really deliberately bring like
Yeah.
a really authentic version of myself on the date and be like, this is the date. Like one of the best quote unquote dates that I've had, it wasn't necessarily strictly speaking a date, was a friend and I met up and went and did some cold water swimming, and I popped to the farm shop that was near the river and bought a baguette, some cheese, I think some like kettle chips and some dip and 2 bottles of pop, and took that down. And she told me more than a year later that that was the best date that she'd had that year. And I was like, I wasn't even trying. I wasn't trying to woo you. That was just how I do things. And she was like, well, that's the nicest time I've had this year. And she was single and dating as well. And I was a bit blown away by that. But yeah, I think it's really important to step out of that people pleasing mode and
Yeah.
just be the authentic version of myself, so that when I end up in a relationship, I don't have to continue to pretend to be something that I'm not.
Yeah, sound advice, I'd say. And do you think that people pleasing, or recovered people pleaser, as you called it, do you think that has evolved? Have you been on a bit of a journey with that this year, or do you think kind of actually no, that was part of you kind of figuring out that you weren't happy in previous
Yeah.
relationship and the
I
decisions that you
mean,
took?
when you are like us, I see mental health in everything now, and I totally see the mental health aspects of being a people pleaser, and that probably coming from low self esteem, and that may be coming from a place of either trauma, but I don't really think in my case that it was a case of trauma, but also that idea of having been a people pleaser and that achieving the results that I wanted it to achieve, i.e. being accepted, and then that reinforcing that pattern of behavior. And so then it just becomes more and more likely. So, and I think I became so entrenched in it and so good at it that I didn't notice that I was doing it. And that was the danger. And when I had a major life change, whatever it was, 4.5 years ago, where the mother of my kids and I split up, and I was able to really take a step back and evaluate my life. And that's one of the things that came through to me, of me recognizing I do that, and I hadn't recognized it at all.
Yeah, cool.
I totally hadn't recognized it. But then when I did, and I wonder what it was that caused me to recognize. Obviously, the stepping back. But I've had a couple of bouts of therapy in different ways and shapes and forms. But I wonder if there was one single thing that made me realise I was people pleasing. I don't know. I think just conversations with the right people, conversations like this, helped me to realise you're people pleasing, and what's the point in that? And it causes a shift and a change, and there are people I don't speak to anymore because what was I getting from that friendship, and what was I able to be authentically myself in that friendship? And I realised I wasn't, and I thought I don't want to continue to be the person that fits into that. I'm quite happy stepping out of that and not being that person anymore, and therefore not having to do that work to fill that role in that friendship.
Yeah, cool. I think it is something that is very common. I've talked recently about a course that I've done on trauma, and actually everybody in my group, we were all like, yeah, massive people pleasers. Like, that has to stop. That is a real big problem. So yeah, I think it's good that you recognise that and the journey there. Okay, I think we've got quite a lot just from your first takeaway date, but let's move on now. We're going to get in.
Just to clarify, Brad, are you saying you want to go on a date with me?
No, absolutely not. I don't even really like us spending this time together, to be honest.
Well, there was me. Hopes up and then dashed again. Just like those three first dates. Hopes up, dashed. Hopes up, dashed. Hopes up, dashed.
Well, it'll happen. But right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to our Would You Rather section of the show, which regular listeners will be familiar with. The hardcore listeners that were with us from the beginning will know that you asked me a very difficult, silly Would You Rather. Would you like to tell everyone what you asked me? Because I'm about to get revenge.
Yeah. Your would you rather was, would you rather sweat mayonnaise or cum mustard?
Which you're still really pleased about. So,
I love it.
The would you rather that I'm about to ask you has all sorts of implications in every single part of your life. And the more that I thought about it, the more I was like, oh, you couldn't possibly, no, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do this. So here it comes. Would you rather...
No.
Would you rather always have an erection or never again have an erection?
God.
And I'm just going to let your mind wander with that as you, in your head, go through all the different scenarios where this is going to be a problem for you either way.
There are lots of ways in which this would be a problem for me. When you say never... You mean never, not never naturally, like chemical inducement still. Oh dear. Okay, a little bit of background for our regular and new listeners is that we think that stupid questions like this actually tell us a lot about a person, and we can get really good information about a person with irregular questions like this. The piece of information this has drawn out for me is what I do as a job. Fuck it. I mean, Jesus. So my work, I work with children with special educational needs. And that's my Monday to Friday. And then my side hustle and passion is mental health first aid instructing. Oh, dear. The first thing that came to mind, before you'd asked me the second part of the question, was I can remember the story of an Italian swimming teacher who had surgery on something. It went well with one minor slight side effect, and it was that he just had a permanent erection. and he had to give up his swimming teaching job because he had a boner.
Difficult to hide it as a swimming teacher, I imagine.
Very different, and especially an Italian swimming teacher. You're not wearing loose anything if you're Italian. No, sorry, Italians. I don't mean to cast aspersions upon you. I've got a dear friend at work who's Italian, but yeah, they're yeah, it would be difficult. There's only one real obvious downside of no erection ever again, isn't there? And it is that I'm not having sex. Gosh, sex is great. Let's just put that out there. That's really good. What I'm going through in my head is, how well could I hide it? Is that something? Is that
probably fairly easily? Couldn't you?
Whoa, Brad, that's just unkind. Is that a layer that you're hoping that we get to in my answer of like, well, is mental health something that we're embarrassed of? Or, sorry, is mental ill health something that we get embarrassed of and hide it all the time when it's there all the time, and we do our best just to disguise it? Are you that clever, Brad? Were you hoping to get to that? Or are you just thinking
that sounds like a great reason for me to have asked that question? Yes, that is what I was thinking. And it was not just to watch you squirm with your answer.
Well, in that case, Brad, I have an answer, and that's where it's coming from. That I appreciate that mental ill health is present all of the time. If you are someone that experiences mental ill health, it's not like you have depression one day and then you don't have it the next day. Like if you are experiencing a period of mental ill health, whatever the nature of that is, then it's going to be present for a prolonged period of time until that's cured. And it would be perfectly natural to want to hide that and to want to get rid of it. But I'm thinking like, yeah, it's perfectly natural to want to hide that and want to get rid of it. However, I think that's where the parallels stop, because what I'm going to say is mental ill health is nothing to be embarrassed about, whereas a permanent erection when you work with children with special needs is something to be embarrassed about. Oh, dear. I think, do you know what? Do you know, it is because of my workplace. We are such an accepting workplace, and we have members of staff with visual impairments, hearing impairments, neurodiversity, mobility impairments, and we are accepting of that with our staff as we are with the children that attend the school. And I think it would be incredibly embarrassing and a real novelty for about 2 weeks at my school before everyone was just like, oh yeah, Knibbo just has a boner all the time. So actually, I think now that we're coming round to it, I think now it's a case of it would be more embarrassing and worse for me and more noticeable for me. And I might assume that more people would notice it than people actually would. And I think most people wouldn't care less in a negative sense. Some people wouldn't notice it. Some people might notice it and not care. And Brad, I'm tipping my hat to you again, because obviously you're linking that to mental health, about how we feel like it's a massive glaring sign that somebody might notice that about us and that we should be really embarrassed and ashamed about that. Is actually most people don't notice. That's why you need to do a mental health first aid course, so you can notice the signs and symptoms of developing mental ill health. So most people don't notice, and the people that do notice have a less negative opinion of that than we might think. So Bradley, please, may I have a permanent erection?
You may, and some strong gaffer tape, I think. Cool. I like where you went with that, because that really could have gone anywhere. I think there's embarrassment on either part, isn't there? Because obviously, in the current context of where you are in life, you are exploring and looking to find connection, and when we meet with a partner romantically, we can't hide the fact that actually sex is an important part of that connection. And so, yeah, there's immense embarrassment attached to that as well. It wouldn't be visible to everybody. It would just be the one person that would kind of notice that with you, whereas the other scenario, like, it's there for everybody to see. But no, I like how you linked it to mental health, actually. Genius.
Yeah, Well, I think we just end up seeing it everywhere, don't we? Like there are mental health takeaways in everything. I recorded a reel on the weekend just gone. I haven't put it out yet about how I'm training the dog at the moment, and the guy I watch on YouTube talks about good things happen when we're calm. So, like, we don't go out the door for a walk until we're calm. We don't get a treat until we're calm. We don't take the lead off until we're calm. Good things happen when we're calm. And I was like, I'm using that in my life. I'm having that for
Yeah.
me, not just for the dog. I'm like, good things happen when we are calm. I just pick up mental health stuff from everywhere now that kind of thanks to the podcast as much as anything.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like that advice. I think that's good advice for everybody. Cool. Okay, I think we can move on from there. You've done well. You've passed your first Would You Rather.
Thank you.
I might go as far to say smashed it. Actually, very good. Okay, next Would You Rather then. So we have talked about you exploring the dating world, and I'm going to move on from dating in a minute. For a little bit. But my would you rather is this. Would you only ever go on amazing first dates with amazing women, but never have a second? So you can do that for the rest of your life, but never have a second. Or date someone who isn't really your type, but makes you feel safe and heard?
Oh no, Brad. I don't like these questions. Gosh, it's really tough. Up until the last few words of the second option, I was like, first option all day long. So I am in a place where you've said that you were previously of like, I'm okay with being single. I am fine with being single. And if it's me and the dog and the kids for the rest of my life, I'm really happy with that. Not an issue.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, I have had some incredible first dates with some incredible women, and it has left me buzzing on a high. Like, that's been really great. But it is difficult. There is like triggers loads of stuff around like self-worth and just how grateful you are or resentful you are for certain factors in your life when those first dates don't turn into second and third and fourth and fifth dates. So that has its own pluses and minuses. And then there's somebody who's not really my type. Like I immediately was thinking, okay, well then not that then. Not that special. Not really my type. Really quick story. I had a date with somebody that was arranged by some other people. And then it transpired that that person she lived in London, and I was like, look, I'm not going to do this because it's too far for me. Like, get the trains right, and it's 2.5 hours. Get the trains wrong, and it's 4.5 hours. And that's not the way I want to start our relationship. I had a chat with a good friend of mine who also happens to be a listener to the show and a previous guest on the show, who said, do you really think you're going to find the love of your life 20 minutes from your own front door? And I was like, oh, no. When you put it like that, probably not. And he said, right, well, then your option is you're either going to have to travel further or be less picky. And my head immediately went to, well, I'm not giving up being picky. I will travel further because this pickiness, I feel like that's the point in dating. Being particular and being choosy and selective is the word I'm looking for. So if I'm being that selective, why would I choose anybody that doesn't meet that standard that I set for myself? But then you chucked in, what did you say at the end? Makes me feel safe and seen and heard.
Safe and heard, yeah.
I mean, when I say like safe, seen and heard, that does feel a little bit like a school crossing safety advert.
Well, let's throw in that she's a lollipop lady as well.
Oh, that's my fantasy retirement gig. I want to be a lollipop man because that is so powerful to feel that safety, and you're a git. Yeah. To feel safe, seen and heard. Right. So the question is, I think they're both really good. Or have potential to be really good. Neither really have potential to be really bad, although that amazing first dates and then no second dates, that's quite painful. My question is, could I have those amazing dates in another way? Could I do that stuff with friends? And to a certain extent, I think I could, but I think dating is very different. Like, I've got lots of female friends, and hanging out with them is very different to being on a date with a woman. Whereas, could I find that feeling of being seen and safe and heard in another way, yes, I think I could. Either therapy or friendships. I think friendships and other methods, therapy, could fill that gap more easily than they could fill the amazing first dates gap. So, Bradley, I'd like to have a string of amazing first dates, and I will book in with a therapist, and I'll just phone you all the time and be like, Brad, I feel like this. Brad, I feel like that. Brad, guess what now? So I'll fill the other gap, the feeling safe, seen, and heard. And actually, that whole feeling understood, or for me, that's been a journey as well. Even in terms of my work, in terms of, and I know I've mentioned it on the podcast before about last year being the first year where I said to the senior leadership team, okay, who's going to help me with sports day? And them saying, oh, we'll get you some help. But because in the past I'd just like, oh yeah, I'll do it, wanting to seem like that was good in some way. But actually, the moment I said I could do with some help with this, they were more than forthcoming. Like, yeah, we'll give you loads of help. Don't worry about it. We get these people involved. Great. So maybe I could even, in my work, make sure that if I communicate what I need properly, then I'm going to feel more heard, understood, safe. So, yeah, I'll have the string of amazing first dates because that's harder to replicate than feeling safe and seen, heard, and understood.
Wow. Okay. I think all really kind of logical thoughts, and not where I thought you were going to go. If I'm honest, but that's the joy of the would you rather's, isn't it? That actually,
where did you think I was going?
Well, I thought you'd kind of, and again, it's not that there's one that's right and one that's wrong. That's the point of the question, because I kind of think going out on an amazing date, like actually, if you're like, you kind of sort of prefix that question with, I'm perfectly happy it just being me and the kids and the dog, and therefore from that point of view, actually just going out on a string of amazing first dates with amazing people, well, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Because it'd just be like, okay, well, I haven't got the kids tonight, I'm going to go out on an amazing date. But then you're right to sort of touch on the fact that actually that's kind of, in terms of connection, is superficial, isn't it? Because we're never following it through with anything. So yeah, I thought you'd kind of go down the road of, no, I want that connection. I want that kind of deeper relationship. But, turns out you're just a slut bag, but it's fine. No, I think
that was not a surprise, was it, Brad?
The way you framed it, though, really rational. But actually thinking about, well, where can I get the other bit from? And actually, like you said, you can get that feeling of safety and being heard in other areas, and it might be through friends, and it might be through therapy and various different groups and things like that. So yeah, cool. No, I think it's interesting insight. And actually, if you're walking around with a permanent erection, it's going to put them off on the second date anyway, but at least you get loads of those amazing first ones.
First date is going to be exciting, though, isn't it? And I think sometimes on a really good first date, you can get a really good connection with a person.
Yeah, I think so.
Sometimes that can be a bit. What do they call it? Like a trauma bond of actually.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're all a little bit fucked up here, and we're having this intense connection, but it's from a really what's the word I'm looking for? It's from a really unsustainable place, and it's not a really genuine connection. But sometimes on first dates you can get really amazing connections, and I feel like if I'm ever going to get a movie made about me, then it's going to be the whole idea of this guy is just cursed. He's allowed these amazing first dates. How romantic would that be? Of like, babe, I feel like I've fallen in love with you over the last 6 hours, but I'm never going to see you ever again. I'm starting to get a crush on myself now.
Do you know what's just sprung into my head? Is that film 50 First Dates?
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Where they've got amnesia. So I think Adam Sandler's the actor, and it's Kate. Is it Kate Hudson?
No, it is Drew Barrymore.
And so he's obviously in love with her, but she every morning wakes up and totally doesn't know who he is again. There we go. Anyway,
this is going to be the new version of that, and it's going to be way better.
Yeah,
I'm going to be played by Zac Efron.
Okay, strong.
Sorry, you carry on.
Right. Well, this is going to be my next little twist, because we do 3 would you rathers, and I'm going to move away from the would you rathers in a shocking twist. Bum, bum,
Have you got clearance for this?
I don't care. I'm doing what I want. In your first episode, one of your key takeaways was about recognizing things within your mental health or things within your life. And we actually sort of coined the phrase to recognize and take action. And I really liked that idea about the episode of actually, we talked around, like, sometimes you can recognize it and think, do you know, like, I'm feeling anxious. Where has that come from? Do I know where that's come from? Do I not know where that comes from? So we talked about even actually just feeling different and recognizing that something was different, although maybe not knowing what it is. So I would like you to tell us a little bit of something from this year. So an example from this year where you have recognized something in your mental health and you have taken action, and tell us that journey.
Do you want the easiest one? Or the first one that came to mind? They're the same one. And it is my esteemed colleague, Brad Smith, talks a lot about mindset. And to me, that means like the stuff that you have in your head that you recognize your thought patterns, and you start to, because you recognize them, you start to learn how to manipulate them to how you want them to be and adjust them to what you want them and need them to be. And I recognised, it was over the course of the last 12 months at some point, I can't pinpoint it, but I recognised that I would put myself under loads of pressure with telling myself what I should be doing or what I should have done. Like every now and again, and the bank holiday weekend not long ago was one of them, where when I have the kids, instead of enjoying my time with the kids, which should be my favourite part of my fortnight, I put myself under so much pressure to have a great time with them that I end up almost getting that paralysis by analysis where I'm overthinking what to do with them. So we end up really not doing that much at all because I'm kind of overthinking what we should be doing, and rather than just living in the moment and having fun and enjoying it. So the mindset that I've adopted is 2 words and a symbol. So do you know the equals symbol, but then it's got a diagonal slash through it, which means is not equal to? And so what I have in my head is that should is not equal to could. And every time now I catch myself thinking, I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have got up earlier, I should have had the kids' stuff ready to, I should. Like that is how my mind naturally falls into that, like this is what I should be doing. Or should have done is the worst one, of a regret from the past. And I change that now in my head to thinking, that is what I could have done. I didn't do that, and that's okay. I could have done that, I didn't do it. We're all right. Because should comes with that expectation, whereas could feels far more optional. And then it also allows me, like for the future, to, instead of catastrophizing things that are happening in the future and me thinking how good those things should be, I now think about how those things could be. And it could be this way or it could be another way. It just gives me a bit more freedom and a bit more liberty to act within. So that's one of the key pieces of learning I've had over this last 12 months. And I actually want to get it put on like a postcard or something and have it by my bed. I'm not really one for putting up mantras around the house. I do see their effectiveness, and actually I've had a few friends that have done like hypnobirthing, and they've had the mantras up around the house of I am in control of my body, that kind of stuff. But if I were to have one, it would be could is not equal to should, or should is not equal to could, so that I can wake up in the morning and remember. Because it happens from the first moment I open my eyes of, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, this should be done. No, you could. I could be doing this, I could be doing that, and when I feel like I could rather than I should, I don't have that pressure of expectation, and actually it makes me more likely to actually do the stuff. So, yeah, that's what I'd say.
That's really interesting, and I'm going to link that back again to your first episode where we did a would you rather be eager or serene, and you did talk about the whole idea of like, I need to be doing. You chose serene because you found it difficult to relax, and I think that feeds really nicely into that, because I should do this is that constant eager must go, what's next, what's next. Whereas I could is that serene. I could do that, and if it's going to make me feel good, I will. But I could do that, and I also might not, and that's okay
Yeah.
too. I like that. I like that. And did that come from anywhere? Because, I mean, I know the listeners might not know this, but I know that you're not clever enough to come up with that on your own. Where did that come from?
I honestly think I did come up with it on my own. Like, I listened to lots of audiobooks, lots of mental health audiobooks, and lots of psychology audiobooks. And I think I'm at the stage where I've taken a lot of that stuff in, and now it's all just stirred into one pot in my brain. And sometimes some of that learning will just pop out in that form.
Yeah.
So I would say, by virtue of all the stuff that I've listened to and some of the stuff that I've read, that knowledge has come out looking like that.
Yeah, no, I really like it. I think it's a great analogy, actually. And again, kind of feeds into why we do this podcast as well, because the more people that listen to this and all of the conversations that are coming out fortnightly, you do take that in, and the subconscious part of your brain kind of whirs away on all that, and it finds the bits that we want to tune into. We might have listeners that listen to every single episode, but we will also very definitely have people that dip into specific episodes for specific things. But I think the more you expose yourself to the conversations, the more you allow yourself that ability to kind of process different views, different ideas, different thoughts, and then apply it to yourself. And I think that's a great thing about this podcast. I know you listen to a lot of other less good podcasts than ours.
Well, on that, I found it really interesting recently. There is another male mental health podcast that I listen to, Man Talks with Connor Beaton. And like, I'm all about sharing the love. Go and listen to Man Talks by Connor Beaton. It's really, really good. And we have done we've had lots of conversations about the manosphere and toxic masculinity and those toxic influences. And he treads a really fine line of having people on that are positive representatives of the male mental health world. And sometimes, for me, he has people on that overstep where I would draw that line, and I feel like are more on the toxic masculinity, the slightly not fully misogynistic, but slightly blame women and blame the female elements of society for men's problems. And what I've started to do now is I would normally have turned that episode off and thought, I don't agree with this guy. But what I'm finding it really important to do now is to listen to those people and think, right, where do I disagree? And why do I disagree? And to put that into this mix in my head as well, to take those opinions and to know, okay, well, I don't agree with that, but why don't I agree with that? And to, instead of just like rage quit that episode, to actually listen, take it on board, see where he's trying to come from, and then see like, okay, well, this is why I don't agree with that, and to be slightly more analytical about it all. But yeah, you're absolutely right. These conversations that we have on the podcast that we're really fortunate to have had, absolutely they filter into my brain, and then I'll find myself thinking about something 3 months on from a recording, thinking, I think that is relevant to what I'm experiencing now. Yeah, it's good,
cool.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, good. And if anyone is going to go away and listen to another podcast, then that's fine. But you have to listen to this one twice before you go and listen to another one, just once. And I wondered, and I'm keeping my eye on the time as well, because I know that you engaged in some therapy, didn't you? This past year, so I wondered whether, I don't know, can you give us a flavour of that in like 5 minutes? No more than 5 minutes?
Yeah, no problem at all. I did a wonderful group therapy course, which was organised by the Talk Club charity. So I really find it's important to explain the difference here. So Talk Club is a charity that's set up in Bristol, and we'll link them in the show notes for this. And a normal talk club is where you just rock up. You don't need to book or anything. And there's 4 rounds, and there's a group of you, and you sit in a circle, and there's 4 rounds. Any men could attend. Just turn up. And those 4 rounds are how are you out of 10? With the idea being that it's easier for men to quantify how they're feeling rather than qualify how they're feeling. Everybody goes around the circle, says what they are out of 10 and why they are at that number. Then you go into what are you grateful for? And the reason for that is that gratitude is well known to improve people's mental health. Then it gives you a sense of ownership because the third round is what are you going to do this week for your mental health? And then it finishes up with what are you out of 10 now? And there is no pressure to have elevated yourself. If you started off at a 5, you can definitely finish at a 5. But a lot of people find, well, the 2 things that I've noticed is that lots of people find that they go up somewhere on the scale and always feel grateful to have their problems rather than other people's problems. It's one of those that if we all arrived and threw all our problems on the table, we'd probably all pick up our own problems and take them back with us because actually they seem less bad than other people's problems. So that's a standard talk club. What I went to was talk club group therapy, where you have to book in, you become part of an established group, and the group is part of the therapeutic intervention. So there was a real expectation on people, if you've booked in and you're part of it, you really should try to be there every week because you want to build up a bond within that group. The way that worked was, again, we checked in with our numbers out of 10. And then it was led by a therapist rather than a volunteer talk club captain. But it was led by a therapist. We had an amazing therapist for mine. She was a Gestalt therapist, which is really about unpicking why you do the things that you do. And then she would just open the floor. And we would start to talk about what had been pressing on us that week or what was interesting to us. And then she would, if the conversation wasn't really rolling, she would say, would anybody like to explain what it is they're hoping to get from these therapy sessions? And simple questions like that really open the door to people saying, well, there's this thing that I've been struggling with it for a long time. There was one guy who had some really big life stuff. I wouldn't jeopardize his privacy by saying what, but there was a guy that had some really big life stuff that he knew was going to be happening at the time of the therapy sessions. So he was like, well, I booked in to do these therapy sessions because I know this event is happening over the course of these therapy sessions. So I think it's important for me to be here. There was really quickly, a bond was built within the group. It felt like in the modern world, I think it's really easy to just rush, and to not really notice stuff and not really notice people and not really notice how people are feeling until they grab you and shout it in your face. And there were times when people would check in and you'd go around the room and the guy would be like, one guy would be a 7, then somebody else would be a 6, and somebody else would be an 8, and then somebody else would be a 5, and then it would come to someone and they'd say, I think I'm a 1. And I swear the atmosphere just dropped to silent. And there was this lovely feeling of, right, one of the group is at a 1. That's incredibly serious because there's not much lower than that you can get. We're going to really treat that with reverence without being told to take this seriously. There was just that understanding of, okay, we really listen to this guy. And we'd really listen to that person, and every time it would help them and they would feel better than that. But it also, for me, the biggest thing for me, which felt like a holiday, was that in my job, as a PE teacher, I talk in this like semi-shout all the time of, can you get that stuff? And yeah, you go over there and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not like really shouting. It's just this. The room was so quiet and so dimly lit. And is it your vagus nervous system that just calms you down?
Polyvagal, yeah.
I was able to be in a place where, I'll see if I can do it now on the podcast, where I didn't need to project my voice at all. I could speak as quietly as I liked, and people would just tune in and listen. I didn't have to fight for anyone's attention. And just that felt like a holiday. It felt like that authentic version of me. So it was wonderful from every aspect and every regard. So that was an 8-week course. I did that 8-week course. I would love to go back, but I've got my new therapy now, which is the hound who's asleep next to me. So that means he needs lots of time and attention, which I love. That's why I got him. But I would heartily recommend group therapy, and in particular talk club group therapy, to anybody that was even half interested in it. Does that fall into our 5 minutes?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I've got one follow-up, though, which is, can you tell me one takeaway that you got from that course?
One takeaway. The biggest, having just spoken about it, the biggest one for me was about how good I feel when I'm just being myself. Actually, this is key. So I couldn't do that. I couldn't do the talking quietly and not searching for attention when you're trying to teach PE to special needs kids, half of whom do not want to learn PE. So you're teaching them PE against their will. So I couldn't do that in that setting. So actually, probably the bigger takeaway is for me to search out the settings where I can just be myself, rather than just thinking, oh, I can't really be myself at work, boo-hoo. Actually, I need to be proactive with that and think, okay, well, I need to find the places where I can just be myself and the time where I can just be myself. And if that means sometimes saying to the kids, like, not telling them off at all, but saying to them, I don't want to have to raise my voice. I don't want to have to ask you 5 times to go and get your shoes on. Can we just be the people that I say it, you do it, and if you listen to me that well, I'll promise I'll listen to you just as well. So yeah, my big takeaway is to hunt out the times and the places where I can just be that really authentic version of myself. Actually, I don't know if it comes across, but now that I'm thinking of that, I feel calmer, and good things happen when we're calm.
It's interesting. Good things. Good things do happen when we're calm. Awesome. Cool. Okay. Well, we're going to move on to the final part of our show. It did make me chuckle when I listened back to the first episode, because we referred to it as the dessert section. Because we did have our starter, which was our takeaway, and then our mains were our would you rathers, and then our dessert. So I'm going to refer to it as our dessert section.
Why not?
Where ordinarily it's about connecting with ourselves, and we spend a minute connecting with our younger self and a minute connecting with our older self. And anyone wanting to know what sort of advice you would give 8-year-old Knibbo can go back to that episode and listen. And anyone that wants to know what you would ask 80-year-old Knibbo can go back and listen to that episode. But this is a new episode with a twist.
I love it. You with these
So
skills.
you are going to connect with yourself, a different version of yourself, but it's not going to be your 8-year-old and it's not going to be your 80-year-old. So I would like to know, what advice would you give yourself in only 1 minute, as always? What advice would you give yourself just ahead of your next first date with the person that you think there is some real potential for?
Okay. I already know the answer. So
Okay.
that'll help us keep to time.
Cool.
When I say I see mental health everywhere, I had a first date ages ago, back near Christmas, with a somatic psychotherapist. So not only do I see mental health out there in the big wide world, but it seems like I date mental health people from the mental health world as well. So she was a somatic psychotherapist, and I talked about the amazing experience that I'd had seeing a respiratory physiologist, and what a difference that person made to the way I breathe to the way I breathe. What's the past tense of breathe? So yeah, seeing this respiratory physiologist was amazing, and she said that she is able to calm herself down and take control of her breath by repeating the mantra, I am what I am, and that is enough. 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening. And I use that now when I go on dates, because it's really important for me, as I've discussed already, to be authentic on dates and to give an accurate representation of who I actually am. So yeah, I try to focus on nasal breathing, which calms me down, and then I remind myself, I am what I am, and that is enough. And so yeah, if I were to see myself before my next first date, I would say to him, "You are what you are, and that is enough." Yeah, that would be
Cool.
my succinct advice.
Nice. Well, he's going to trot off now for that date with those words resonate in his head and his erection disguised as best as he can.
Knowing that there's no chance of a second date.
My next person for you to connect with is an opportunity for you to have a minute with this person to ask them any questions or see what they've got to say. But this time, this Matt is 1 year into a steady and really healthy relationship.
What a dude. What am I asking him stuff?
What do you want to ask him? What do you want to say to him?
Okay. So if it's just me and him, then I get to go totally off the record, and I would ask him, look, are you truly happy? Do you truly see this as being a good thing? With the idea that I would know if he was bullshitting me. And because I again recognize and take action, because I know in the past when I've bullshitted myself and I've pulled the wool over my own eyes, and like that sort of secondary or tertiary inner monologue being like, ignore it, ignore those red flags, don't worry about it, don't rock the boat. And I've definitely done that in the past, and I can think of times in previous relationships when my primary inner monologue was like, get out the fucking car, I've had enough of this. Like in the early days, way back before anything went seriously wrong, I can remember times when I was thinking, just get out of the car. We don't need to stand for this. This isn't all right. This isn't making us happy. And I didn't act on that because secondary inner monologue was like, no, come on, you don't want to rock the boat, and everyone else has got partners, so you need to have a partner too. So I would ask myself, in that knowledge of like, I will know if you're lying, I'd ask myself, are you truly happy in this relationship, or are you just trying to get to 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and see what he said? Yeah, I'd challenge him a little bit.
And do you think you would be able to discern, because you've talked about being a bit of an overthinker as well, so do you think you'd be able to discern from truly being happy or maybe just overthinking faults sometimes?
So I've got I don't know the specifics of the statistic, but divorces are far more likely in second marriages and third marriages. And I think that statistic is bandied around like it's a bad thing. But actually, I think those are the people who realise, like, I wasn't happy once before, and you know what? I managed to get out of it. And I'm still alive. I'm still here today. So if I'm not happy in my next relationship, I know there is an exit door, and I can get out of that. Not that I would get married in less than a year. That is not okay. So would I be able to discern the difference between overthinking negative, the inevitable negative aspects, versus it actually being bad? Yes, I think in my heart of hearts, I think I'd be able to isolate. We're not happy here, and I think, contrary to popular belief, I'm actually really romantic, and I think it's okay for there to be one special person out there just for you, and for someone to think that they're nearly there, that's nearly the special person, and then to discover, pooh, that wasn't the person. That's a real shame. I would rather spend the last 2 years of my life with the right person and the previous 90 years alone than spend those 92 years with the wrong person. Far prefer that. To just get it right in the I nearly really swore then. To just get it right in the end, that is far more preferable to me than getting it nearly right for the rest of it.
Yeah. Cool. Matt Knibb, he's gone off now. He's gone back. He's back off to his lovely relationship. What a show! That concludes the dessert round. So we've got to wrap up now with our takeaways. I think while I give you a bit of time to think, The overriding thing that I think has come across so well, and why you are the person that you are, is you've talked all the way throughout this episode about being your authentic self, and you framed that in lots of different ways. You talked about being your authentic self. You said later on, be yourself, search for the places and the people where you can be yourself. And I think we can't really underestimate how important that is, to not only recognize who we are and the happiness that brings us, because trying to be somebody we're not is only ever going to end badly, but being in your authentic self and realizing who you are not only attracts the sort of people that are going to fit well with your authentic self and the sort of activities that fit with that, it's also going to allow you to live in the moment more, which is obviously something that you reference as well, actually, to be able to live in the moment. And I think that is where we find this idea of peace. I think it's more and more common that people are recognizing, actually, what do they want out of this life, and it to be in that state of peace, whether they're on their own or in a relationship. So I think that comes through really in everything you talked about. And I think kind of anyone who knows you will know that you are you. You're not trying to pretend anybody. You're not trying to people please anybody, which I think is a good journey that you've been on. But I've got to say, I think it's absolutely genius. Your whole should is not equal to could. And that idea of taking that away. And I think that is something I will take away. And I wrote down as we did it, the idea of should, you reference should is like an expectation, like I must do this. But you also said it's regret. I should have done that. And therefore, by very nature of it, I regret that. Whereas the could is much more optional. And also in a past tense, the good is being able to let go. And that is something that is also very, very important for our mental health. So I think it would be wrong of me to go with anything other. Obviously, I've talked about being your authentic self, but anything other than the should is not equal to could. I really, really like that. So that is going to be my takeaway from tonight's show. Anything for you?
I love that. Obviously, because I came up with it. But I just think, and I'm glad you like it too, Brad, because it's the sort of thing that just rolls around in my head. And then you never quite know if that's a good idea or not until you put it out there with someone else. And then they're like, oh, that's really good. You go, oh, okay, cool. I thought of that. So, I like that very much. My takeaways are like, I've been really interested to do this recording because we have so many guests on. And I really want for those guests to come on. And as well as to produce a good show, we talk a lot about loving the process. As well as producing a good show, I want the guests to enjoy their experience of being on the show, to enjoy the conversation that we've had. And you and I know that the guests always say to us off air, God, I really enjoyed having that conversation. Thank you for that. Sometimes they say it on air, but most of the time they say it off air, like when we finish recording, they're like, lads, that was great. I really enjoyed having that conversation. Thank you so much. And I wanted to see what that was like for myself. And I have really enjoyed this conversation. It's such a lovely opportunity to kind of share the parts of my journey that I'm happy to share, and to keep back the stuff that actually maybe is not ready to be spoken about publicly. So one takeaway is these types of conversations are really good conversations for us to have, and they can leave the person that's been in those conversations with a really positive feeling. So that's my first takeaway. And then my second takeaway is something else that's been a bit of a theme of the whole show, not just this episode. And it's that whole idea of being the authentic version of yourself. And that includes talking about your mental health. And I think it's been a revelation to realize that that's not what it's about. It's not about talk about your mental health. You need to talk about your mental health, or be yourself. You need to be yourself, because that is so pissing hard to do when actually you don't feel safe and comfortable and confident to do that. And my takeaway from this show is where I was talking about find the place where you can do that. Find the time where you can do that. Don't just force yourself to do that. Like, I have to do this because people say I have to do it. And do it in a place where you don't feel safe and comfortable and seen and heard and listened to and all that stuff that was part of the second option of that person that I could date. Find those places. And if you can't find them, bloody build them. Like, make those places. Dan Reed from Men Walking and Talking, of like, I want to go on a walk for my mental health with some other men. There is not that walk around here. I am going to make that walk happen. I'm going to create that thing that I need. I feel like you and I created this podcast a little bit because maybe it's what we needed. So yeah, one of my last takeaway would be, if you feel like you struggle to be yourself, like I have done in the past, and if you feel like you struggle to talk about the stuff you need to talk about, don't force yourself to do it. Find the place where you can do it. And if you can't find it, make it.
Sound advice. Very good advice. Amazing. Well, look, I'm gonna break a little secret on this this first birthday episode. Is that any diehard listeners that listen right to the end might have started to realise that Matt Knibb, guest on tonight's show, puts a little funny outtake right at the very end, right after the music. So if you normally hear that final music and then you kind of, turn the podcast off, then you could be missing out on some comedy gold. And I'm just going to put it out there. I think this has been a great episode. Knibbo, thank you for coming on and talking so openly and honestly, as all of our guests do. I've got one final takeaway from tonight's show, but I'm going to save it just for you to play after the music. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
You won't get away with an erection in Budgie Smugglers.
You won't get away with much in Budgie Smugglers. You can't even poo yourself in them.